So this is the mature forest. This is what most of this landscape in this area looked like prior to logging. So we walked through the initial salvage cut that was close to the road, that was a lot of Norway spruce plantation, and now is regenerating to beech, birch, and maple. Behind us is a more recent cut. This one was done about 10 years ago, and we're going to walk through that and see some of the moose use of that bigger clear cut. This one was probably closer to 100 acres and wasn't quite a clear cut. It was a seed tree cut. They left large mature trees scattered throughout the stand, and some of those have died and fallen over. Some of those have been broken by ice and snow, but that also had a lot of moose browse for years, and still does. For a number of years it was really affecting the regeneration and keeping it stunted and hedged. Even when I first started doing this class and would come out here 5 or 6 years ago, the regeneration was only kind of waist to head high in most of that area, as the moose had kept it browsed off pretty effectively. But eventually enough of it got above moose height that now it's beginning to grow up higher, although there's still a significant amount of moose browse in here. It's a really good feeding area for moose, and it's juxtaposed between this mature forest, which provides some shade, some thermal cover in the summertime, a beaver pond complex to the west that we're going to eventually walk through, and another smaller forested wetland complex to the east that we're also going to visit. So moose have ready access to thermal cover, areas to cool off in the summertime, and in warm winter days under the shade of hemlocks. And then they have ready access to this big patch of browse that they use pretty regularly throughout the year. So I'm just going to put my camera on my head, and we're going to walk through this stand a little bit and just show you what the landscape looks like. So pardon that interruption, but now you should be back to seeing the landscape again. And there's Clementine, so you'll hear her. There's a little bit of snow flurrying today. It's a nice day to be walking in the woods. This area was also affected pretty significantly by the ice storm in 2008 or 2009. I can't remember which year. So there was a lot of breakage in the canopy from that ice storm. You can see some of these trees that we're walking through. This big cherry tree and a bunch of sugar maples. So there's mostly black cherry, red and sugar maple in this stand. Some big ash, white ash, and a few other species mixed in. But there was a lot of canopy damage from that ice storm. And then some subsequent storms, some straight line wind events have tipped over a number of these big trees. Right, so as we walk through, you're seeing a lot of blow down some of these mature trees. So small or regional disturbances have created openings in this forest canopy. We're at fairly high elevation for Massachusetts. I think we're over 2,000 feet. We're on a relatively moist site. This hill is fairly moist year-round and drains down into this alder swamp and then a hemlock stand. Quite often in the summertime, if I come out here, and even with previous classes when we've come out earlier in the fall, we've observed some fresh moose beds right in this part of the forest itself, so between the wetland and the feeding area. When I come out by myself without the dog, I sometimes see moose in here or moose around the perimeter here. But this is a mature northern hardwoods forest. Not that much regeneration of the species in the canopy, because the moose do a pretty effective job at browsing any of the palatable species that grow.